Yeah, it must be a YouTube thing. Twitch seems to be working.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to double check that afterwards so I can do my stream as well. I want to start doing Horizon today.
Are you going to start doing Horizon? Fair enough.
Yes. Anyhow, let's
start this.
Is your game loaded?
Yo, it's loading up. But we can do our intro while it's sort of loading up and everything. Just like fine. So what's good, Twitch and in the past YouTube? It's Daniel the Ultimate Blade here, back again once again with a new series called DestinyCast. I'm here with my fellow Destiny fanatic, who will sound off.
What's good, Twitch? It's your boy, Lamb the Ultimate Form, here with Dan, talk to you about some Destiny.
Very, very good series. It's just like it's one that is close to both of our hearts. And
that indeed.
For those that don't know anything about Destiny, we'll give you sort of like a quick little overview about what the series is about. So Destiny as a franchise is a first-person shooter, sort of a
looter shooter
with that MMO sort of mechanics, with those basic RPG mechanics. First started back in, I think it was 2014?
Yes.
Yeah, it was back in 2004. God, that was a long time ago. I'm getting old. I'm getting so old. So back in 2014 with Destiny 1, which we were both there for. Some dark days.
Very dark days.
But we've carried on with the series, and now we're at Destiny 2 with a new DLC on the way in about 3 months. So we've got lots to sort of cover story-wise. Give you a very sort of basic overview. We are these beings called Guardians. We were given some power called the Light from the Traveller. And now we are fighting the darkness. To give us a bit of a quick sort of overview. If you want to learn more about the story in general and all of the past that Destiny has, I recommend a YouTube channel called My Name's Bife. He's got like a, I think it's 4-hour long video which basically summarizes the whole of Destiny's story. So I recommend you go and watch that because I think he will give you a better overview on the whole sort of story as a whole. If you agree with that, Lan?
I definitely do. Destiny is one of those space fantasy games and franchises that very much takes you on a journey through Earth's history and then takes aspects of what we have now and then multiplies it by like 5 billion and then gives you its story and its interpretation of a possible future if a paracausal being decided to terraform the entirety of the solar system and give us vast amounts of knowledge and technology and magical space powers.
Gotta love magical space powers.
Gotta love magical space powers.
That's what it's all about. But yeah, that's Destiny as a whole. It's just like, and Lan, how did you get into the series originally?
So, I used to pay attention to. I'm a gamer in general, and I pay attention to things, as well as being a storyteller, a writer, and an avid reader myself. The concept of having a space-age futuristic wizard with guns sounds like totally up my alley, and being a big fan of fantasy and sci-fi, the amalgamation of the two just speaks to my very being. And it's the kind of stuff I would love to write myself, or even maybe one day I'll be part of Destiny 4 when that eventually comes out in like 10 years. You see my name scrolling across the credits.
That's if they do a Destiny 4.
If that's the plan. But if Destiny is to be a long-running, what's the word for it?
Franchise?
No, the type of game, the games of service.
It's a live service. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, live service. It is very much going to be heading in that direction where eventually what they have at the moment is going to be so big, they have to transition and kind of start anew.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It's just like, but when that happens, that'll be a whole different thing. Or if that's even their plan, because of what they're doing with the game at the moment, may actually negate that need altogether. Mm?
Dan, shh, that's for later.
But we'll talk about that later.
It's for later.
As for how I got into the game, I was a beta player. So it's just like I was there when the beta originally came out. We could only access the Cosmodrome and that one strike and suck really badly at PvP. Huh? I've been into the series ever since and everything, and all the way up to base sort of Destiny 2, where I did drop off a little bit of base Destiny 2 because it wasn't quite what we all wanted, but this isn't a place for negativity, so I'm not going to be negative about it, because that happened, but we move on from that. But I jumped back on at the later end of Forsaken, and I haven't looked back. It's just like I'm loving what we're getting so far and everything, and roll on the future of Destiny, which we will talk about more in this video, especially from what we've got from this season and what you're seeing on the screen right now and everything. So, Lan, Season of Arrivals, that has like impacted the storyline so much more than we thought it would have, doesn't it?
Yes. So I think this kind of, yeah. So as we said before, like, check out My Name Is Blythe's channel, look at his timeline, then come back to this, and then you'll understand what we're about to talk about. The simple premise of Destiny very much works in their favor. It's a conflict between light and dark. And there's so many ways that conflict, we recognize that conflict through things like Star Wars and Star Trek and other sci-fi things, where there's this enigmatic being of darkness and this being of light who can't directly impose its will, but does so through other beings, which is basically what Destiny does. The Traveler in itself, we don't know very much about it, but we know that it has a counterbalance, that being the darkness. And for a long time, we had rumblings of the darkness and this thing that threw humanity back into the Stone Age. And now, almost 6 years later, we are now being confronted by the very thing we have feared for 6 years. And it's the most exhilarating experience now, because everything that we've worked on since pretty much Destiny 2 from the beginning, and then that kind of got ramped up with meeting the Drifter and learning about all the other things that came with him, and then beating the Taken King and finding out about the other about the worm gods and all that stuff. Like, everything's kind of culminating in this direct conflict with the darkness. Whereas up until now, we've been fighting things that are aligned with the darkness, like the Vex and the Hive and the Fallen, who are not directly involved with the darkness, but now they are.
They're sort of like a byproduct of the darkness following the Traveler.
Yeah.
They're a byproduct and a consequence of that.
Yeah. So we have our backs against the wall, and we're being closed in at all sides by something that is very predatory, but something that's also trying to win us over to its side. And Dan can talk more about that when we start going through what's been happening in Destiny more recently.
When it comes to happening more in Destiny recently, this all sort of started culminating in sort of like Shadowkeep in general, because Shadowkeep in itself and the seasons that led afterwards all sort of added to what's coming next and everything, especially with the darkness. And I hate to say it right now, but the pyramid ships, which, for anyone that doesn't know what the pyramid ships are, it's just like, we don't quite know what they are in themselves, But what the theory is that they're sort of like the essence of darkness. They're what the darkness sort of is embodied in. And as Lan said, the darkness is now trying to communicate with us, and an ending line in Shadowkeep, spoiler warning. So you've got like a couple of seconds to get away if you can, but this video is all about the analysis of the story anyway, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then why are you here? Go catch up first, then come back. It's just like, it all culminated in a line, it's just like, we are your salvation. Which makes me wonder what exactly all of that means.
If you play Destiny in a more casual format, most of this probably won't matter to you. But if you're deeply engrossed in the lore, like Dan and I am, more so me, because at the moment I don't currently play Destiny. Dan is kind of my eyes and my ears, and I do lots of my digging online and stuff. I literally used to go on Bungie.com and read through the Grimoire. A friend of mine literally bought the printed books of the old Grimoire, which is incredible because those big books are heavy. But
they are thick books.
They are thick books, like 6 C's thick. We're in an incredible time of transition, especially with Bungie as a company, and they've been able to take the story where they want to take it. And we should thank them wholeheartedly, even if things don't work out. That's just a preface from me. I am terrified.
Yeah,
I am legitimately terrified.
Especially looking at some of the cutscenes we've got recently from like Anna Bray and Season of Arrivals in general. It's just like, actually talking about Season of Arrivals, we need to talk about the previous season a little bit, which is the season of, I can't remember what it's called now.
Worthy?
Yeah, Season of the Worthy and everything, of how that slowly progressed with that storytelling. Because what a lot of people wouldn't have noticed is that Rasputin had a chart in one of his bunkers, and every week the pyramid ships would get a little bit closer, which has culminated into this season of the pyramid ships arriving on Io. Which is just a scary concept, especially from the cutscene we got of Rasputin getting shut down. And for those that don't know what Rasputin is, he's a Golden Age AI, and basically he has control of basically everything, as in like weapon systems and everything, and is a stupidly powerful force. But he has now been shut down, as in Season of Arrivals, which is another scary thought, which also terrifies me, Lan. I don't know if that absolutely terrifies you, that our sort of only defense system can be shut down so easily.
In all fairness, Dan, yes, that is terrifying. But you have to then think about what's been going on with Rasputin through the entirety of Destiny. Because if you remember correctly, when we had the War Mines DLC, the Hive were actively trying to go after Rasputin.
Yeah.
And the Fallen did as well.
Yeah. The Fallen did
Rasputin,
for their own reasons.
Yeah. But Rasputin is tied up in a lot of history, and for a long time the Guardians were trying to get Rasputin on our side, and in the beginning it felt like Rasputin was actively trying to work against us, because for whatever reason he had devised that the Guardians could not be part of his plan.
Yeah.
Luckily he folded on that after we discovered Anna Bray and helped her be essentially the voice,
Rasputin,
and be the voice of Rasputin. So him being shut down means that, one, whatever dark machinations were happening beforehand have finally succeeded. Perhaps we will encounter what shut down Rasputin exactly. It could be the Hive, or, spoiler alert, Savathun.
Yeah, easily.
Because the Witch Queen, yes, the Witch Queen has been involved in quite a lot of things that have happened since her brother and nephew have been taken down, as well as some of her nieces. So it's one of those things where Season of the Worthy in particular for me was one where lots of the build-up was going on, and you could easily sit there and be distracted by some of the stuff that had happened over that 3 months. Because obviously you had
because it's so subtle as well. It's just like a lot of it is very subtle storytelling, and only those that really pay attention to the lore and everything and how it all sort of works would actually be able to notice some of this stuff. Because it was as a season when it came to storytelling, especially moving on from Season of the Worthy to Season of the Rivals, it was very subtle.
Very, very small things had happened, and that even attributed to the lore books that had come out since Shadowkeep. Of course, we had the Pigeon and the Phoenix, which was a Saint 14 centric book. We had the Transmissions from the Darkness that we had. I can't remember which lore book exactly that one was called. I should have double checked and wrote it down. But many of the lore books that we've had since Shadowkeep, and even a few beforehand, had been focused on small pieces like Osiris, Saint 14, Brother Vance. I mean, she's not a small character, but the Queen of the Reef. But loads of these people have been involved in this climactic confrontation with the darkness, and we've slowly been moving towards this. And sometimes it felt like we didn't know how and why we were moving towards this current trajectory, because in Destiny 2 the Red War happened, and we were sitting there like we're at the height of our power. We took down Crota, we took down the Taken King, Oryx, and there's pretty much nothing that could probably want to step to us now. And then we had the Red War, and our light was stripped, the Traveler was broken, our light was fragmented, and the Guardian community was fragmented. So that was, I think, probably the biggest moment of weakness that we've had since the franchise has begun. And we've only built in strength as we've gone along.
Especially from like Destiny 1, it's just like the power fantasy was really there and everything. In the terms of just like we're just growing stronger from when our Guardian was first res to now, and everything. Especially with the Red War and everything of how we were stripped of our power, but then we just came back stronger. Which is just a very interesting sort of like power dynamic. But at the same time, could that lead on to more story threads if the light can be taken from us so easily? The darkness could easily take it away again.
Well, I think that's the polarity of the current situation that we're in. There's so many threads now that we have to deal with. I have to return to the point of the Drifter. The Drifter, as a keynote point, opened our eyes to. He was pretty much the main prelude to what's going on now. The Drifter was part of a group called the Dredgens, and they were fallen guardians, ones who'd managed to learn how to tap into the power of the darkness. Now, up until now, we knew that Void Light was the closest a guardian could get to the power of the darkness, which is terrifying in itself. Thanks, the National 6. You guys are bosses, but small tangent aside, the Drifter, if you haven't not encountered him yet, or you're learning about him for the first time, he is one of the most interesting characters I think they've given us so far.
Easily. Especially with his backstory and how it sort of encroaches into the lore and everything, and even some of the exotic quests like the Last Word quest.
He's a character who's very much entrenched in the current conflict and the current phase of the conflict, because even now he's involved in what's going on currently directly. And that's definitely something we're going to move on to in a moment, because with what's going on now, the key players are some of the most most interesting trio we've had since we first met the Vanguard.
Yeah, easily. Now, when it comes to Seasons of Rivals on sort of a more character focus point, our two main characters that we're sort of leading on from first Seasons of Rivals are actually the Drifter, and Eris Morn. For those that don't know who Eris Morn was, she was originally part of the original fire team that went to go take down Crota, son of Oryx. Unfortunately, they failed because Crota's power was just too powerful for the Guardians back then and everything. And in Destiny 1, we go and take down Crota from the guidance of Eris. But she has learned how to harness the power of Hive magic and everything. So through that power and everything, she's been able to sort of take us on a journey of using Hive magic and everything to our advantage, especially when it comes to the Taken King, which was a DLC for D1, and us being able to become Ascendant Hive, which basically is a hive that is ascended and can enter a throne world. Now, as for a throne world, I'm not going to explain that here, because that's incredibly complicated, and I think that could easily take this video into 2 hours, if you agree with that, Lan.
Definitely, it's a very abstract concept. The key phrase here is paracausal, and it basically means like beings have attributes that don't make sense to the current established understanding of the universe. They normally sit outside and are able to influence the universe and the threads of fate and destiny in very adverse ways. So just remember that when I say paracausal.
Totally agree. But if the request is there, and if Lan wants to talk about it with me, we can talk about the throne worlds. And
we can try.
We can try and talk about it. But if that request is there, let us know in the comments and everything. And if the request is there, we shall do it. We shall do what the people want. But
cool. So we should probably get a wriggle on and keep talking about what's going on at the moment and what it will lead to.
Yeah.
Because then that will move us to our next character.
And how important she is to the story and everything. But as I said, we're at Season of Arrivals, so we've got lots to talk about there and everything. Obviously, the pyramid ships are now on Io. And
not just Io.
Titan.
We knew that was one. We knew that one was on the moon. They have they've come across the Kuiper Belt, which is like the very rim of the solar system, and they have been sighted on Io, which is the last place the traveler touched. Mars, Titan, the moon. They haven't come to Earth as we for now as we know, but they have been seen on every other destination planet that we can currently venture to in D2.
I'm not sure they've been sighted on Mercury yet.
As well, Mercury hasn't really been a focus since we went back to the Black Garden.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that was during Shadowkeep. Well, we don't even know if the Black Garden is technically on Mercury because we go through a gate to get there. Yeah. So it can literally exist in another dimensional outside time.
Yeah. So who knows where that place is? It's just like
another conversation for another time.
Yes, because the Black Garden is a whole different kettle of worms. But the whole premise of Season of Arrivals is mainly focused on Eris and the Drifter. So from Eris and the Drifter, we're getting a whole storyline about how the Darkness is basically trying to commune with Eris. And Eris is trying to sort of like transcript what all of those messages mean. To stop us is Savathun. Now, why Savathun wants to stop us is like a whole different question on itself, which next to this conversation is basically going to be based on theory. None of this is fact, and because we don't know yet. As the season goes on, we may get an answer to why Savathun is trying to stop us from communing with the Darkness. Now, from who Savathun is, from all of the lore and everything, she is known as the Trickster and the Manipulator. Correct me if that's wrong, Lan?
No, that is correct.
So she's the trickster and manipulator. So maybe what my theory is, the reason she doesn't want us to commune with the darkness is that maybe she wants to overthrow the darkness herself.
That is
Could be
interesting.
a possibility.
From what we understand so far, and some of this is a bit speculative because nothing's been said concrete about how Oryx obtained the power to take. Now, so far in D2, between D1 and D2, we know of two particular beings that have the ability to take. The first one was the Taken King, Oryx, who we believe made a contract with the darkness in order to be able to take other beings to form his army, which also granted him powers in darkness. And the other one was Riven, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct. Now how Riven obtained that power
Is interesting.
yes.
But he is a Amhankara, so
Well done.
Good
the upper limits of that being's power is somewhat murky in terms of what we've been told and what we haven't yet been told, but we've seen and experienced ourselves. We're moving into Reefborn Awoken territory, so or like actual Awoken territory here with the Dreaming City. So I'm not too clear on that stuff because I kind of missed some of the Forsaken stuff. But as far as I understand, as far as I can speculate, when Oryx was killed, Savathun took over whatever contract was made with the darkness. Because even after Oryx was taken down, we still saw Taken dotting about.
And for a long time, they were very fragmented. Yes. They were very fragmented in their leadership, and not
the
as
Hive very
militaristic
much
as
was
they
the same
used
way.
to be.
And the Hive was very much the same way, which is why Hashla Dune and her sister were trying to solidify the Hive on the moon. But the speculation on that side is Savathun was the one who put Hashla Dune up to it.
Yeah, with that manipulation of the trickster and everything.
Yes.
Which is an interesting storyline all on its own. When it comes to Taken, they actually had quite a big part in Shadowkeep in the background sort of lore. There was a strike on Io, which I can't actually remember the name of now. I can actually probably get it up here actually. So give me a second and I will tell you the name of that strike. But it's focused on the Pyramidium. For those that don't know what the Pyramidium is, it's a Vex sort of construct which manipulates reality. Which I think is the best way of describing what the Pyramidium is. It's called the Festering Core. So, a description of the Festering Core is to descend deep into the heart of Io's Pyramidion to root out the Bograjin infestation. So that infestation was the Taken in general.
Okay.
Fighting against
I didn't know
the
that,
Vex.
so I'm learning something here.
Fighting against the Vex, which makes me think that the Vex, who are also agents of darkness, and Savathun are on opposite ends, which why it sort of comes to my theory that there might be a confrontation between Savathun and the darkness itself. So that whole strike sort of takes place with Savathun trying to take control of the Pyramidium and maybe actually trying to take the Pyramidium itself. And evidence of that is when you go deeper into the Pyramidium, there are taken blights like in the Dreaming City.
I like that.
So there's sort of like a lot of background that people missed, and I only discovered that strike like after a month after Shadowkeep actually came out. So it wasn't actually that much in the strike rotation. So you wouldn't actually find it unless you came across it by accident, like I did, or if you went actually
Zydron,
specifically looking
the
at
Vex
it,
Gate Lord
or
who
just had more
denied
attention to
Guardians
detail than
access to the
I
Black
obviously
Garden,
did.
the very place from which the
But
Traveler's
it's there.
Crown arose.
Hmm.
The pyramid uses Zydron's very
Okay.
presence
Well,
as
that's
a
interesting. I didn't know
reminder
that
of the
bit, so
eerie face
that's
when the
news to
Traveler's
me.
existence was threatened.
So
Silence is nightmare.
that's a very interesting sort of like confrontation from the Vex and Savathun as a whole, which I just think is just generally interesting. Especially if the Vex and the Hive and the Taken are meant to be on the same sort of side.
I mean, are the Vex siding with anyone in particular? I don't know.
I think they're just essence of sort of pure darkness and everything, since they're pure manipulation of the darkness, which is why they're all over the Black Garden.
Yeah, I mean, the Black Garden was a site of a heart of darkness, and a particular sect of the Vex, whose name escapes me at this current moment. I forgot to write that down too. They worship the darkness, which is why we went into the Black Garden in the first place, to dispel the darkness in the area. But I don't know if the Vex as a whole are servants of the darkness, because they seem to have their own malicious machinations in themselves. And as for the Hive serve their Hive gods, but the Hive gods are the ones who have ties to the darkness.
Yeah. So.
And I mean, the Cabal sit on the outside because the Cabal do whatever the heck they want. And the Fallen,
sectors of the Fallen.
Certain groups within the Fallen. I don't know if you want to talk about that now. Do you want to save that till we talk about the future of Destiny?
We'll save that until we talk about the future of Destiny, because that sort of all links into each other.
They'll all lead into the next individual we're going to discuss.
Yes.
And this is why I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm just excited in general.
Yeah, just take it away, Dan. Take it away.
So we, as a Destiny community, for the next sort of like season of Destiny, which the name actually of the DLC actually escapes my mind right now.
I would have to double check that. Give me one
Beyond
sec.
Light. It was Beyond Light.
Beyond Light. That's it.
So we have Beyond Light.
I just realised that the title was so loaded.
Yeah, agreed. But that sees the return of the Exo Stranger. For those that don't know who the Exo Stranger was,
or have conveniently forgotten.
Yeah, it's just like because they did. It does feel like that Bungie sort of forgot about her for a long time, but it turns out they haven't. She was the character that first sort of drove us towards the Black Garden in Destiny 1.
We tore Zydron's head from his body. We'll defeat his nightmare all the same.
So yeah, so that's who the Exo Stranger is, and after the Destiny 1 storyline, she basically took a major absence for the rest of D1, and we thought her story was over, which it turns out it's not. So the Exo Stranger in general, it is going to be taking us through the transition of using the powers of the darkness, because as she said in the trailer for Beyond Light, the line between light and darkness is ever so thin, and let's cross it together.
Yes.
So that tells me that she's going to be a very prominent character in Beyond Light in general.
And this is compounded by the fact that the two people that she decides to drag together, who we are currently working within the guise of, are Eris Morn, a guardian who we assume lost her light because she doesn't have her ghost. Or can guardians still use their light even if they don't have a ghost?
Yes. No, they don't actually, because when Cade lost his ghost and everything, making
lost
rest
his
in
light.
peace, he didn't actually lose his light. He was still able to use those powers and everything. He just couldn't. He just wasn't immortal anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so Eris Morn, she isn't technically classed as a fallen guardian, but because of her extended period of time within the Hellmouth, she had to resort to using Hive Arcana to survive, as well as steal Hive's 3 eyes. That's hilarious. And then the Drifter, who for a time ran with the other Dredgens as a what's the group called again? Crap.
The Disciples? It was Disciples?
Yeah.
Disciples of
Yeah,
War.
but he ran with them, so technically he was a fallen guardian or a fallen light bearer. But he never actually succumbed to the darkness, which is interesting, because that's all tied up with his particular story about how he's been preparing us to fight the darkness, and intends to literally leave us to do it.
Yeah. Because he plans, and you see this a lot in Season of the Drifter. So if you Google Season of the Drifter, or just look at Bice videos in general, it will tell you that the Drifter plans to sort of like run away when this all happens, and you sort of help him do it, if you choose to follow him, which I did. I didn't actually do the other side of that storyline, so I don't know how that sort of works out with the Vanguard spying on the Drifter. But apparently we have a place on that ship of when the darkness hits us.
So it's really interesting that the Exo Stranger gathered 2 members of our Guardian history who have had encounters with beings who use the dark, and are now currently helping us explore what the darkness is, as well as seek avenues in order to do so. For instance, as Dan said before, the darkness is communicating directly through Eris in order to communicate with us. So she's transcribing those communications. On the other side, the Drifter is currently helping us communicate with the Nine, which is interesting because
kettle of worms.
there's a whole kettle of worms who the Nine are, but he has noted history with the Emissary, someone who speaks on behalf of the Nine. And it's not just one life he was involved in, it was 2 of her lives. The life that she had before she was the Emissary, and had numerous encounters when she first became the Emissary. So the Drifter and Eris both serve as 2 doorways into learning about the impending conflict, which I really do like about how they've used those characters, because they're the only characters of those sort that we currently have in the large expansive cast that we have. Because either we have characters who are under the Vanguard, those who exist somewhat outside in the vacuous space within that orbit, then we have those who are of the Awoken, then we have who else do we have? We have the Dredgens, we have people like Shin Malfa, who he's a Guardian, but he's kind of on the outside of that. Like, everyone has their orbit, but those 2, they're in a box, and now that box has been given to us in order to serve our purpose.
Exactly, especially with the last word exotic quest in Destiny 2, that sort of Shin Malfa handing over the mantle for it. Even though if you look deeper into the lore, Shin Malfa was a Dredgen as well. That's entirely complicated.
Best plot twist ever.
Yeah, so as I've said so many times, I tell you, I'm gonna put his channel in the description. Go look at My Name Is Pipes videos.
Or Myelin Games, either one of them will do, to be honest.
Games. I'll tell you, I'll link them both. So you can pick your poison. So who you want to sort of, who you want to explain that whole kettle of worms from. They both do it extremely well, and in 2 very different styles, which makes them both very unique, sort of, to watch and listen to. But moving on from that, what do you think is going to happen in the next DLCs? Because obviously we're going to have a new power to attain.
Yes, so before we actually talk about our speculation for the future, one thing that was stated in the last, in the announcement for all of this information that we're getting for Destiny's future, Destiny, this is what, Destiny Year 4?
Yes.
Be Year 4 and Year 5 respectively.
Yeah.
Year 4 and Year 5 respectively, because the last expansion will be Year 5.
Yes.
So we got told that finally we're taking those steps that were seeded when we first met the Drifter, and we will be gaining the power of the darkness. And this has been a long time coming. The season of the Drifter was last year.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've actually started moving forward with, hey, this is now the power that we're going to get. And they told us that the power is called Stasis, and it will sit alongside the other powers that we have, which are Solar Light, Void Light, and Arc Light. And that also means that we will have weapons that actually have that attribute. Well, what that attribute really is, we don't quite know yet, but that will be a whole new set of classes and subclasses, whole new supers, whole new ways to combat a situation, and it will come down to your Guardian and your Fire team to mix and match the power of the light and the dark to defeat the darkness.
Exactly.
And that is, for a lack of better phrase, balls to the walls amazing.
Absolutely. Which creates, I think, quite a power dynamic, especially in terms of the Vanguard.
Yes, because does that also mean that we will get someone who sits on the Vanguard who takes on attributes of the darkness? Because the Hunter Vanguard seat is still open.
That is very true. Or will the Vanguard be dismantled completely?
That's also
moment,
a thing.
At the
'Cause
moment,
that's the way
the
the consensus
Vanguard
is moving.
is very, very extremely fragmented. And for those that don't know who quite the Vanguard are and what place they have within the Destiny storyline, they basically govern the Guardians. They are the mentors of each Guardian class, which are Titan, Hunter, and Warlock. For those that don't know anything about the game. So we did lose our Hunter Vanguard in everything, and that was in the whole Forsaken storyline, which is something we could talk about at some point.
At some point, yeah, because we can pick things as topics later on that have ramifications for what's going on now.
Yeah, exactly. But the Vanguard might be actually quite split on using the powers of the darkness. Because I know for a fact that Zavala has actually asked for the Drifter's help in this season, not Ikora. Which makes me wonder if there's going to be a split of Ikora against the power of the darkness, because I know that the Traveller is speaking directly to her at the moment.
To Ikora?
Yeah. No?
Oh, that's interesting, which basically makes Ikora the speaker.
Yes. So I think that is shown in, I can't remember, it's been quite a while now. That was shown in Forsaken for when we got our new subclass trees for the second tier supers and everything, which was quite a big moment from when the Traveller was awakened. So one of the dialogue lines she had, and I can't believe I can remember all this at the top of my head. That's the glory of having an eidetic memory. It's just like
for important things, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but there's a lot of useless information up there as well. There is a lot of useless information up there, unfortunately, but I digress. One of the lines that she said is just like, the Traveller's been speaking to you too. I know of this. Let those voices in and follow what it says. As it's been speaking to me too. So that means it's not speaking to Zavala.
No. Zavala, you are not the chosen.
And now Zavala as a whole, especially from the Season of the Worthy and seeing the Almighty crash down, has been getting very overconfident.
I like Zavala's since Cade, rest in peace, left us. They have taken Ikora and Zavala in very different directions. Zavala's always been a very military man. He's a Titan. That's what Titans do. He sat at the wall for 6 fronts and Twilight Gap and did his job. But Ikora is a part of several groups within Warlock community, including the Hidden, and she's always been a bit, or as a warlock, as the more mystical class, the one that seeks out to understand their attunement to the light. She's taken lots of steps and strides to the more mystical side of things, and when you start going into that territory, you start asking, like, how does the traveler then communicate its will? Because the last speaker, as far as I can recall, got murked off after he talked smack to Gaul.
Yeah, basically. So the speaker we originally had is now in Traveller Heaven.
With all the other speakers talking trash.
Yep. Exactly. And now it looks like it's chosen Ikora.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because out of all of the Vanguard, even if Cade was still around, I think it would still chose her anyway.
But that's a plot point that could probably carry through into not the next expansion, the Witch Queen, but the one afterwards.
Yes, exactly.
So we got to have that one in the back of our heads, people.
See, my whole theory at the end of the day is I think Ikora won't have anything to do with the powers of darkness because she's so aligned with the Traveller. I don't think she'll be open to it. I think she'll think it would be too risky
there will be definitely a group of Guardians who very much stay to the light.
Yeah.
And there will be some of us, it'll probably be the majority of hunters that do that.
Yeah. Agreed. But in the other terms, we have Zavala.
Yes.
And I've noticed a lot in sort of like the dialogue and everything is that he's actually become very power hungry.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him again. He is you're not gonna like me saying this, but in actuality, at the moment, Zavala is one of the most powerful titans, not just in status, but literally the way he wields the light. And he stands alongside people like Saint 14 and Shax and what's the other guy's name? The Iron Lord.
Saladin.
Saladin,
also known as Saladhead, as I call it.
Saladhead. But if you put those four titans in one room and told them beat everything with your bare hands, they would do it. Yeah. And they would do it with stunning displays of solar, arc, and void light that you've never seen before.
Totally agree.
So, if he's power hungry, it's not just in a political sense. It's like genuinely like he wants Guardians to be stronger and probably him himself, because he for a long time he's been in direct conflict with the consensus.
Yeah.
So that's something else we have to think about as we move forward. But that's small fry stuff we can talk about another time.
So that makes me wonder if, at the end of the culmination of this, if Zavala does start harnessing the power of darkness himself, could he fall to the temptations of the darkness?
That is potentially where we could go with this.
Which makes me wonder with Lightfall which is the name of the final expansion, even though it's been confirmed not to actually be the final expansion of Destiny.
But it's the final part of this arc.
Yeah. It's just like, if maybe us as Guardians are actually going to get a choice.
All Guardians knew my pain.
If we submit to using the powers of the darkness, or if we side with the light, if the darkness gives us that choice.
But that's saying if there's an option for us to make a pact with the darkness. They might do what they did with Seasons Adrift, where we have to have a split choice, and then we have to go either we work directly against the city, or we're just trying to get more power from the darkness in order to defeat it later down the line.
Yeah. Which could corrupt us as Guardians in the long run, giving the darkness an advantage over us, or even be able to subjugate us to their will, or if the darkness has the power to take, even to take guardians.
Yeah, that would be terrifying. Oh, damn. Oh, shivers, bro, shivers.
Because looking at the power to take in everything and how it sort of works, this is my understanding from it. It'd be interesting to find your understanding from it, Lan. I think the only time that you're actually having the power to take, I'm not sure if it's actually clarified in the lore, you probably know more about that, is if you have some sort of essence of darkness within you, like of hidden darkness.
Okay, you cut out there, and I'm really scared now. Because if my internet clocks out, I'm upset.
Totally.
So,
Would you like
say
me
that
to
again.
repeat it?
Yes,
So,
please.
let's say that to be able to be taken, let's say you have to have some sort of essence of darkness within you.
Yeah. No, that is very plausible. I don't think the darkness or any entity who has the power to take could take a guardian because they're born of light. But a seed of darkness has to be in them, and they have to use the power of darkness in order for that process to actually be expedited.
Or to be at a certain level of darkness. So let's say Savala fully embraces it, but we don't use it, but we don't let it overcome us. Which could prevent the darkness from taking us as the Guardian. But could take Savala.
I know you don't like him, just leave him alone.
No, I'm just saying, it's a point. I've actually grown to like him quite a bit, actually, especially from his storyline and the way he's going and everything. It's a possibility it could happen. So, like, for instance, I think someone like the Drifter couldn't be taken because he has the balance of light and dark within him. He hasn't let it overcome him.
Well, as far as we know, we haven't seen him fight yet, so we don't know how deeply engrossed he is in the dark. But didn't he carry like a copy of Thorn or something? Yeah. So we don't know how deep he went into that because we can talk about this. We could literally sit here and do an episode of the Drifter. There's like a half an hour, 40-minute conversation just on him.
That'll be DestinyCast episode 2, by the way, guys. So a little bit of prelude there. That will happen, and it will most likely be about the Drifter. Because his sort of like we're going to have to do one on Eris as well, probably before sort of Beyond Light hits as well, because they're two people that are just gonna.
Oh gosh, you're bouncing again. You're bouncing again, Dan. No.
Good now?
Okay, something's going on outside. Okay, can you hear me, Dan?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We might want to wrap this up then if this is going to be like this.
Yeah, so we'll wrap it up there. But let's just say a lot of stuff is going to happen, especially with the darkness itself. We have a new enemy to fight in Beyond Light, which is part of the Fallen. Yes. But we will save that explanation for another episode because we're already hitting an hour, and I don't want this to go over an hour. So for the next episode, we will talk about more of the new enemies we are going to fight, and the history of that, since they're a sect of Fallen. So next episode we'll talk about the Fallen themselves, and sort of how they were born and everything, and how they sort of came into our system, and about where they are now and how they've separated and segmented so much.
Yes, so strap in for that one, people. I'm sure Dan will let you. I'm sure Dan will have plans for the future of DestinyCast, and I will be right here in his commander's seat, and I'll be ready to take this ride and this dive with him.
From now on, since we're using it, now we'll make this a Twitch series, which will be uploaded to YouTube as well. So to see it live, tune into my Twitch, give it a follow, or else you'll miss it. Until then, This has been Daniel the Ultimate Blade, here with DestinyCast with my partner in crime,
Now in the ultimate form. And I
until
guess we will catch you guys later.
like, comment, and subscribe for more on YouTube, or follow for Twitch. Until then, see you Guardians next time.